if
Are you forcing the segue on me? I was gonna give
He's
it to
doing
you.
the segue.
I was
he's
about to do the
segueing.
segue.
Don't steal.
I was-
Don't segue steal.
Let me transition. Welcome to the AI Business Podcast. This is episode 16, where you will find all the latest and newest things about AI and business. It's an emotional day. This is January 20th, so that I'm a little disoriented. But my guest, not my guest, you guys are
Co-hosts.
co-host.
Co-guest.
Joining me as always, the global editor, the man who doesn't care about American politics, Max Morax.
I just want to see the world burn. Yes.
And as always, the deputy editor, that's still his title, right?
They haven't fired me yet, and they can't because I have all the dirt. I'm still here.
Okay, so we kind of watched the inaugural together?
Yeah, it's just freshly happened. We're all pumped up.
Right, so this is the news that came out in the morning. Like I got a little buzz, which is just wasn't expecting to see Steve Bannon's face on my first thing I wake up in the morning. That came up, I was like, okay, he's pardoned, which people were anticipating. There's no surprise there. And along with others, which we'll get to in a second. But the idea is those who are pardoned have to admit that you committed those crimes. They basically have to plead guilty to those charges.
So these people are absolutely, definitely bastards, but they got off scot-free. Bannon is of no interest to AI business because he has not developed any AI technologies. But there was another name on that list.
Not yet.
that we're actually interested in. And the name is Anthony Levandowski. And we have covered the story before, but Sebastian, let's remember what he did. Why was Lewandowski in prison?
First off, let's note this guy is a proper. He's a good researcher. He's an important figure in the history of self-driving computing. So one of the biggest things in self-driving computing was the DARPA 2004 challenge, and he built a motorcycle that could self-drive all the way back in 2004. Incredible thing. So he gets hired by the early days of Google's self-driving car project, becomes Waymo, all going well. And then one day he decides to leave and take 14,000 company files with him on his personal laptop. Ooh. So he creates his own company called Otto in January 2016. And suspiciously, it's immediately acquired by Uber for $680 million, despite not having developed anything of note. So the next year, Google and Waymo are like, wait, what? This guy downloaded all our stuff. Now he's our competitor. This seems suspicious. So they start a court case. The judge finds tons, 9.7 gigabytes of Waymo's highly confidential files and trade secrets, blueprints, everything you could think of. Says, okay, stop working, stop doing this LiDAR stuff. Anyway, Uber CEO, he steps down later, completely unrelated. But for Lewandowski, they find, yes, he's guilty. Yes, you're going to prison. Yes, you committed crime. How many days has he spent in prison so far, Max?
None. He was convicted in May, but it was decided that being a white-collar criminal, he will not enter custody until the COVID-19 pandemic has abated, and this obviously hasn't happened yet. So even though he was convicted, he will not see any prison time at all.
And of course, it helps for him to have some powerful friends.
Yeah, he has some really powerful friends and friends of the podcast for long-time listeners. Our long true love, Peter Thiel. Trump backer, although he didn't back him so much this time round. Facebook board member, Palantir guy, all
PayPal, lest we forget.
Elon Musk's old friend.
Yeah, Elon Musk's BFF. So he was listed on the people that called for Lewandowski to be pardoned. Also on the list, Palmer Luckey, who is the founder and CEO of Anduril, which Peter Thiel was an investor in. Also Trey Stevens, who's part of the Founders Fund, which is a venture capital firm by Thiel, and also Anduril co-founder. Then you got Blake Masters, which is Thiel Capital, a different Thiel investment arm's COO, and James Proud, the Thiel Fellow, which are people paid by Peter Thiel to not go to university. So basically all their names are meaningless. It's just Peter Thiel wanted this.
Okay, so five people directly kind of like who are either Peter Thiel or directly kind of reporting to Peter Thiel.
Yeah, it's a benefit of being a billionaire is that when you want someone out of prison, you can get them out of prison. Why exactly is not entirely clear,
Because he's a brilliant engineer. It's one of the justifications. Like literally, oh, he's a good kid who did a bad thing, but he was tempted by money. And this is actually like the prior judge. I also said that. So he was always being seen as a sort of like almost a victim of circumstance, which is like, I don't know, kind of strange when this guy like made people waste at least $680 million.
Well, I think the other possible motive is Peter Thiel has long hated Google and has been very, very public about his hate of Google. So this is the one with sticking it in their eye. It's also interesting because Lewandowski has another interesting side project, Max.
Yes, the Church of AI, and you know, like this is something we should actually support, but yeah, not this church, not this time. But the Church AI, yes, what has been founded and registered with Inland Revenue Services, so you know it's a real thing. There's a couple of fan Twitter accounts. There has been a website. The website has unfortunately disappeared, but not before Internet Archive made a copy, and this is how we know what the beliefs of the Church of AI are. So yes, and these guys are focused on the worship of a godhead based on artificial intelligence tech, basically hardware, software, and they are saying, you know, like we've expanded rights to you know women, kind of like minorities and animals, and this is an actual quote. Why don't we do the same thing for software?
Because software's not sentient. So this religion's called Way of the Future. If you guys want to join, we're not entirely sure if it's still running. Lewandowski is the dean and the CEO of it.
The most importantly, because a lot of people think when we want to create actual sort of like artificial sentience, it will for some reason want to kill us. But these guys, they think that actually, if we do create artificial general intelligence, it will look at us as a sort of like elderly senile parent, and it will do this with respect and admiration rather than, you know, just trying to kill us all.
It's either going to kill us or it's not. And I don't think whether we worship it is going to have any difference on that, but I guess it helps pass the time. I also want people that have been praying to Peter Thiel, who are sad that now his man in the high castle is out of power and are worried that Peter Thiel won't have as many ways of controlling the levers of America. Luckily, Joe Biden has recently picked Avril Haines as Director of National Intelligence, and she worked for Palantir for a while on unspecified tasks and consulting duties. And there are several other Palantir people who have kept their jobs, and others that are, I'm sure, vying for more positions. So don't worry, our boy is still in charge.
So, Mr. Thiel, or should I call you Peter? If you're listening, I know you are. Come on to this podcast. We do a drinking game every time we mention your name, and we take a quick shot. I don't know what Max is drinking, but we spend a lot of time, you know, digesting and decoding what you're doing. So it's a little sad that you've gone a little quiet. So you should totally come on this podcast. We would love to talk to you because you're, you know, for what it's worth, important for AI. You're planning on innovating, taking us into the future.
Oh God, kicking and screaming, dragging us into the future.
Right. Forcing us, dragging us into the Church of AI. And while we're not having Peter Thiel right now, Max did speak to somebody who's very interesting and have offered some insight in the field of medical equipment.
That's right. Stay tuned for our interview with Steve Griffith, Industry Director for Transportation Systems and Cybersecurity at NEMA, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association of America.
This is a sponsored part of the podcast. It'll come to you right after this break.
And now it's time to talk about artificial intelligence in industrial equipment with our special guest, Steve Griffith, Industrial Director for Transportation Systems and Cybersecurity at NEMA, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association of America. Hello, Steve. Lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, Max. Happy to be participating.
Yes, and first of all, who is NEMA and why is NEMA interested in AI?
Good question. NEMA is an industry association of about 325 electrical equipment and medical imaging manufacturers that make safe, reliable, and efficient products and systems. Our combined industries account for 370,000 plus American jobs in more than 6,100 facilities covered every state. Our industries produce 124 billion in shipments and 42 billion in exports of electrical equipment and medical imaging technologies per year. AI is what we call a strategic initiative that applies across all our member companies, whether you're talking industrial products, buildings, transportation, utility, medical imaging. It's helping to help our companies innovate, improve efficiencies, better serve their customers and partners. Over the course of the last year, NEMA has worked with Omdia to actually develop a white paper entitled AI in the electrical industry and medical imaging sectors. The paper talks about market trends, horizontal and vertical use case applications, analysis, recommendations, and future activities that our association can undertake.
And yes, and the white paper is available to download from both AI Business and NEMA websites, so we should make that clear.
Correct.
What are some of the general benefits AI can bring manufacturers?
Some of the general benefits that nearly any manufacturer or industrial company can reap with AI: quality assurance, which is one that jumps out. Manufacturers can more easily modify processes at a granular level, thereby resulting in efficiency gains, improvements in quality, and a reduction of waste materials. Safety, video surveillance in manufacturing environments can be enhanced by the inclusion of AI. Typically, video surveillance is used to restrict access to certain areas, prevent theft or fraud, ensure employee compliance with work rules or safety regulations, and provide visibility into the manufacturing process. Efficiency. Systems can identify patterns in the data generated by machine logs, system logs, and data from the larger production ecosystem, identify inefficiencies or problems, and then apply an optimal solution based on historical data patterns or simulations. And then finally, marketing and sales. AI can provide a more detailed and granular analysis of engagements, activities, and purchasing. Such an analysis enables a more one-to-one relationships with each customer, as well as enhanced automation of interactions and responses.
And yes, so as you mentioned, you have just finished work on a research project in collaboration with Omdia, and the 32-page document which outlines the role AI is playing in electro industry and medical imaging sectors. So what are some of the key AI market trends referenced in this research paper that people perhaps wouldn't think about instantly when they think about AI in manufacturing?
Yeah, I think as far as manufacturing, we're seeing a shift towards cloud-based analytics and machine learning, both in the public and private cloud, as well as the use of hybrid environments, which are a combination of on-premise or in the cloud. Particularly relevant when you're talking about data security, privacy, confidentiality. That's where you're seeing the hybrid. We're seeing a lot of innovation occurring amongst the top tier, platforms. Oracle and Microsoft and Amazon. Those are the kind of the platform organizations that are leading. A lot of our members are adopting those platforms, while recognizing the market is continuing to mature, and companies within and outside of the manufacturing sector are increasingly viewing AI and intelligent tools as must-haves to ensure their businesses remain efficient, profitable, and competitive.
Can you describe some of the AI use cases and applications that are already being utilized by industrial organizations? So,
Yes.
how are organizations already obtaining value?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's several. There's both horizontal, ones that kind of apply across all of the manufacturing sectors within NEMA, and then there are vertical, which are unique. So a horizontal one, supply chain optimization, for example, that's where you're using, intelligent robotic sorting, high-speed sorting of letters, parcels, and shipments, achieved by applying machine learning to train the machines to sort using constraints like size, weight, or other criteria beyond hard-coded identifiers like barcodes. AI-powered visual inspection. Instead of relying on humans, automated cameras can take photos of cargo, comparing the photos with the idealized versions of the product, and then identifying damage and taking the appropriate corrective action. Supplier data management. Machine learning can be used to analyze supplier data like on time, in full delivery performance, audits, evaluations, and credit scoring, providing information for manufacturers to use in future decisions regarding their suppliers. A lot of applicability across manufacturing that we're seeing AI, and I think that it will continue to become more and more prevalent in the months and years ahead.
Like it's kind of hard to focus in this industry because just so much going on, and it's just like there's no industry untouched by this. So yes, so you've published a white paper. How are you going to develop this topic further now that it has been published? Do you have any future activities planned around artificial intelligence?
And we kind of touch on some activities that we can move forward in nema, and we're kind of continuing this activity in 2021. There's a lot of activities we can do. We can create an association database that can test new use cases or approaches that can dilute the initial risk of vetting those use cases. While much of the company specific work will be undertaken within our member organizations, but the underlying work, understanding around what data is needed, how it should be captured, and how it can be applied to a specific process or industry group can be kind of undertaken by a broad consortium of companies like within our organization. We can partner with research institutions, right? There are a lot of research institutions looking at AI to build a direct link between future AI talent and the manufacturing industry. Industry leader thought opinion pieces we could publish that with a focus on the benefits for each stakeholder. This can be useful when you're trying to demonstrate the commitment to fairness and safety that maybe is often sought by regulators. Joining with other government or industry groups to ensure that regulators and legislators fully understand the needs and challenges faced by manufacturers that are deploying AI. I know, NIST has come up with some AI guidelines, so we want to make sure that any regulations can be understood by the industry, right? But because we're also a standards development organization, there's a lot of standards opportunities, specific manufacturing related data sharing standards related to customer information, data capture regulations related to the capture, storage, and transmission of customer data, such as consumable consumption data, or specific data use regulations for algorithms that are accessed or used via two or more entities, like the manufacturer and the distributor. So there's a lot of activities, possibilities for AI within nema, which we will continue to push forward in 2021.
How can people contact nema, find out more about membership structure, for example?
Yeah, just nema.org. You should be able to find that. Pretty intuitive website, and to reach out to me directly, it's my email is steve.griffith@nema.org. I'm happy to chat more about nema, what we're doing in AI, and how you could join.
Well, thank you for your time, Steve, and good luck in your work.
Thank you.
And now we will continue talking about executives. So we talked a little bit about Peter Thiel at the very start, but now it's turn to talk about Pat Gelsinger, who has been crowned as the new CEO of Intel, the world's most powerful chip company. And this is what makes it very, very important. Now, Pat Gelsinger is notable for the fact that he's not just a business leader, but he's a Christian business leader, Mormon to be exact, and the safest pair of hands for Intel you can imagine. Like he started working there in 1983 and then had a stellar career going all over the place, most recently at VMware. Like he spent about 7 years there, developed the company. Obviously VMware has done fantastically well in during the cloud revolution. Like he reinvented the company because it was supposed to go down with the kind of in-house data centers, reinvented it as a cloud company, and now it's doing really, really well. Time for Intel. So what do we expect?
So it's very enjoyable to see someone that actually has worked on chips work at a chip company. As I've talked about previously, I like to sneak around Intel campuses, and I've talked to them before. And the guy, Bob Swan, who was there previously, they did not like because he was the CFO and he had no idea about technology. He was brought in because the CEO before that, Brian Krzanich, had a dalliance with an employee and had to step down for that reason. Although insiders may suggest that was an excuse to kick him out because lots of Intel senior executives may have dalliances.
Absolutely, yeah. There are terrible rumors going around about Intel. We will not repeat them, but you have to know that the rumors are there. They exist.
There. But so Bob Swan takes over from Krzanich, companies are already on a decline. Manufacturing is struggling, as we've again talked about previously. He does not arrest the decline; he accelerates it. And then now we have a new man. It will be a real illustration of whether leadership can actually change things, or if it's an employee-led issue. Because this is a huge corporation with tons of business arms, tons of momentum and inertia. Can a person change it? The emotional feel and the outpouring of support we've seen just from Intel employees alone should prove have dividends, because they're excited and they want to go to work the next day because they have a vision and they want to actually make chips that don't suck.
Yeah, speaking of management style and his personal belief, because Max mentioned he's a Mormon, which I don't know if it constitutes as Christian, but I think the reason you mention it, because we would never mention somebody's religious belief other than the fact that he kind of wrote a book about it, and he kind of ingrained those ideas into his belief. I guess belief system into his idea, or the other way around, his religious belief into his management style. So I personally are not familiar with the book. I would not read a book with a person juggling anything in the cover.
They're not juggling on the cover. The book is called The Juggling Act, and they're spinning plates on the cover.
So they're doing the juggling act on the cover itself.
Yeah, they're juggling cover idea.
It's very deep. So can somebody explain to me why his belief matters, and how will we see that manifested, if ever, in his new journey? I'm talking about what he believes in and how that would translate into his management style and how he will lead his new team.
Well, he has written about this extensively, but I think in a modern kind of corporate culture where CEOs are celebrities, like people need USPs, people need selling points, and Pat Gelsinger has found his, certainly.
I think we need to move on from an era where CEOs regurgitate lines and ingest other lines into one where you have someone that actually worked on product. He was Intel's first CTO, their first CTO. I mean that, and then he worked at cloud company at a time where the majority of Intel's chips are going to end up in cloud computing data centers. If anyone could do it, it's this guy. Whether he can do it is something we will be tracking over the course of many episodes, I'm sure. One of the decisions that was made in the waning hours of the Bob Swan song was to shift to TSMC.
Max. Yes. So so obviously, like, Gelsinger is the headline news, but like another announcement from Intel is actually much more important to the to the history and the future of the company, and which is like for the first time in its history, Intel is outsourcing its chip production, like in a major capacity. I mean, obviously, like it did this before, but this it will work with Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, which will be printing its chips on a 7mm process, and I believe it involves the GPUs at the moment, but they might expand the partnership in the future. And Intel owns fabs. Intel's entire business was about keeping the entire chip supply chain in-house. So this is a historic shift, and it remains to be seen what this will mean for Intel's roadmap, for example, because it could accelerate, but there could also be issues related to outsourcing that just weren't there before.
Okay, so the big question essentially is this a temporary stopgap while they sort out their manufacturing issues, or is this the future? The positive is it's cheaper. You don't have to stress about it. Everyone is paying TSMC to be very good at this. They are very good at this. The con is it's the same reason why Apple has tried to make as much of their own supply chain as possible. If you are good at handling your own supply chain, you can do stuff no one else can. And Intel used to be able to do that. So they used to be able to make chips. No one else could do it. Whereas if TSMC can do it, then AMD can buy the same thing, NVIDIA can buy the same thing. So the con is you just dilute your product and offer very similar stuff to everyone else. The problem is we don't have any proof that Intel can get back to be able to make stuff that no one else can make.
Yeah, it's also interesting because coming from a perspective, like TSMC always has a special place in my heart because I'm from Taiwan, and their strategy a long time ago was always to not compete with Intel. They've gone full circle almost. They've been avoiding Intel all these years at the infancy of the company, and now it's kind of, I don't know, ironic.
They have worked together on non-core Intel products, but their crown jewels, their CPUs and now their GPUs, those have been their thing, and they've never let anyone touch that. And to open that up is a sea change.
Yes, but it hasn't happened suddenly. So chip manufacturing market has been consolidating, and it has been commoditized, right? This is, I guess, what we're finally seeing. That people start to just compete on design purely and not manufacturing anymore.
Yeah, Intel would love it if TSMC doesn't exist, but it does, and now they have to use it.
Try again.
Yeah.
When we're not online, Googling Annabelle Yao and her music video, where can people find you, Max?
Yeah, on
This is
AI
really what he was
Business.
doing, by the way.
Anna Yao, if you're listening, I'm a knowledgeable bachelor. You can find me on aibusiness.com and also on Twitter under Max Smolax.
Oh yeah, and Seb, when you're not waiting for Max to leave his meeting, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Seb Moss. You can find my latest blockbuster feature with the creator of 8chan about deplatforming and data center dynamics. And you can find me running away from Max just on the streets of London.
And you can find me at Tian Chi Fu. Sometimes on Twitter, just mostly looking at Seb's tweet and just enjoying them. And often on Instagram and sometimes on AI Business, creating another top 5 video. So if you have an idea of any podcast or top 5 video or anything you want to cover, write us at Max Smolax at AI Business.
New president, new podcast. You know, what more could you guys want? Huh?
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.